all evidence looks like it was pretty peaceful and pretty great. I mean, all the achievements we talked about, the writing, the wheel, the standard rates of measures. And we think around 1500, a new group of people came into the Indus Valley, and they were known as the Aryans. Now, the Aryans were nomads, and we've actually talked about the Aryans before when we talked about the Persian Empire. We think some of their descendants might have been Aryans that migrated into what is present-day Iran. Kind of makes sense when you look at the words. You're like, oh, this kind of sound the same. And with it, these people, they might have come from Central Asia, like maybe around where Russia is today. We don't fully know for sure. But the Aryans are going to come into the Indus Valley, and they're going to be technologically superior because they, my cherubs, will have iron. And they will also have chariots. And as we've talked time and time again about technology, when one group comes in with a stronger metal for their swords and spears and things like that, and something new like the chariot, it's going to wind up being an incredibly unfair fight. The chariot, a lot of us probably don't think of that as super high technology, but being pulled by the team of horses made you go extremely fast. Think about them as like what an attack helicopter does for the army today. They move in quick, they destroy their enemy, and then they get out of there before the enemy can do anything. So if you've got Alex here on the back of a chariot, he's able to go slice and dice people, make them look like Swiss cheese, you know, run over some people. It's going to wind up making it so that the Indus Valley is quickly conquered and subjugated. And we think they went through what was called the Khyber Pass. So we talked with our geography of India on Monday, how India was relatively protected because it's surrounded by different mountain ranges. Well, there's this one narrow pass through the Hindu Kush Mountains called the Khyber Pass, which is about there, and that's where we think they came in through. And the Aryans are going to change India dramatically. So first, now we have warrior chiefs ruling the society of the Indus River Valley. Before we had priest kings, and now we have the Rajas. And Rajas basically are warrior kings or warrior princes. You know, we're going to see the term Raj used up until modern times, actually. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a new written language and a new spoken language being developed. So Sanskrit winds up becoming the new written language, mixing with the Aryan writing along with the native Indus Valley civilization writing. And this is something that is going to be used to record the Vedas and other important documents. So we're actually going to get to see a lot of historical things written in Sanskrit. And thankfully, we still can read it today. I actually had a friend who was learning and studying Sanskrit because she was fascinated with India. And the language of Hindi was created with the mixing of the Aryan language and the native Indus Valley's language. And Hindi is still a language spoken by millions of people today. Millions. It's super important. And we're going to have a new religion forming as well. Because once again, the Aryan ideas are going to combine with the thoughts of the native Indus Valley people, and we get Hinduism being born. And this is one of the important world religions. In fact, next week we're going to spend quite a while discussing Hinduism, and then subsequently we're going to discuss the religions that were birthed from Hinduism with Buddhism and Jainism. So we see the Aryan invasion is going to make major changes to India, and these are changes that are going to last. Still, the dominant religion in India is Hinduism. Like I said, it's a world religion. There are people all over practicing this faith. It's terribly fascinating. You guys are going to really enjoy, I think, our discussion on Hinduism this week or next week. A new education system is also created. We're going to have these folks called the gurus, who think of them as expert teachers. And much like how people went to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and went and learned from those philosophers, people are going to flock to the gurus. And it's actually very similar idea to our philosophers as well. the final big change that we're going to see happening to India is going to be the creation of what's called the Vedic caste system, or the Varna caste system is another way that it's described. And what we're going to see, that there are going to be different groups of people divided up into society, and these people are going to have different jobs. And this is something actually that still has some impacts in India today, although the caste system was outlawed and deemed illegal because it led to, unfortunately, sometimes being mistreated and persecuted. Um, I've had many students who were able to, from Indian descent. I said, "Oh, my family, our family, we're from the Brahmin line, or my family is Kshatriya." And I think that's really fascinating and awesome how people can still know, even though it's something that isn't really around today in law. But in ancient times, we're going to see that this is actually going to be a very rigid law that's going to be held to very tightly. And we're going to look at that as well as we study Hinduism. So we see a lot of changes, and our goal for today is to really be able to recognize the changes the Aryans are going to make to the Indus Valley, because these are, like I said, changes that are going to last. Hindi is still a spoken language, and it comes because of the Aryan invasion. Hinduism is still an incredibly popular and important religion in India and the world, and it's still there and happened because of the Aryan invasion. We still have gurus, excuse me, and we still see some echoes of the caste system in society. So this is a major event, and it's kind of wild because this happened 3,500 years ago, and it still affects the world today. Sometimes kids are like, "Why do we study history?" Because some of this still affects the world today. It's how we got to where we are. So let's just take a moment to look at our caste system. And I would recommend probably drawing this pyramid. The only thing I don't like about this pyramid is there should be separation between these two levels, between the Sudras and the Pariah. And we're going to talk about why there would be separation there. So if I were you and drawing this, I would only draw the 4 and then have this off to the side, because these people are actually outcasts. They're not part of the caste system. So on the very top of our caste system, we have the Brahmin priests. Now, the Brahmin priests are the very top. They are going to have a lot of respect and authority. They're the religious leaders. But they're not the actual rulers. Much like how we had Egypt having religion being incredibly important, when we talk about the Americas with the Aztecs and the Maya, we're going to see religion holding an incredibly high importance in the power. And even when we get to Europe later on next year with the Roman Catholic Church, we'll see this idea that we have the religious authorities at the very top of the pyramid. However, the rulers are under. And the rulers are the Kshatriyas. And they're going to be our warriors and our kings, our princes. And it kind of makes sense that they would be the people in charge, because the Aryans came in as a military force and they conquered the region. Now, the next group is going to be the Vaishyas. And they were traders, merchants. They are people that worked for the government. But one of the things that is going to be very interesting about the caste system that we're going to be learning about is the fact that you stay within your caste your whole life. There is no promotions based on merit. There is no marrying another class. Brahmins are going to marry Brahmins. Brahmins are going to interact with Brahmins. They will be their friends. They will interact with some Kshatriya and Vaishyas, but Brahmins are their own distinct group. Just as Kshatriyas are going to be their own group. You are born a Kshatriya, you die a Kshatriya. You marry a Kshatriya. Your children will be Kshatriya. Same for Vaishyas. We're going to see this is going to be a very rigid social system where people stay where they are born. And we're going to learn about why that is and how people would move in and out of that as we talk about Hinduism more next week. The next group is the Sudras, and like I said, they are actually the bottom. If we were in the classroom right now, I would be covering up the pariah, the Harijans, the outcasts. I'd be coming up so you don't want them part of this pyramid. Now, the Sudras are your unskilled workers. So therefore, they're the people that are doing the farming. They're people doing the building. They're the people doing lots of work. They might be servants. And I want to remind you, a Sudra is going to be a Sudra. They're going to interact. Their friends will be Sudra. You will not see instances where Sudras are friends with Kshatriyas or Brahmins or Vaishyas. You will not have that fairy tale, that we always see where the poor Sudra girl, the poor servant, winds up marrying a prince. That did not happen. That is not something that would happen in this society. And we're going to see that there were religious reasons why that didn't happen with the beliefs. Now, the final group, which I said should not be part of this, even though they're on the bottom, yeah, they would definitely be on the bottom, but they would be like 100 miles below this pyramid. And that's the pariah, the Harijans. They are considered the outcasts, the untouchables, sometimes called the children of God. And this idea is that these people in their past lives had done so many bad things that they weren't part of this caste system. They weren't able to work. They weren't able to go really live within a home. So often they would be homeless. And it was one of those things, and this is kind of sad because people were being treated this way. But it would be said, like, you wouldn't even, even if you were a Sudra, the bottom, you wouldn't want your shadow to even touch a pariah as you walked by. You wouldn't look at them. You'd pretend they didn't exist, which is a horrible way to treat people. But this is going to be something we're going to be learning about as well. I know it's very sad because we know that you don't treat anybody like that. But we're going to see why this belief came to be and why people thought that this was deserved. But the whole thing with this is, in your life, you are what you are. You're a Vaishya, a Sudra, a Kshatriya, a Brahmin, and your actions in that life, if you follow your duty, your dharma, you'll have good karma. We sing that in our song, follow your dharma to have good karma and be reborn anew. Because we're going to learn in Hinduism, there's the belief of reincarnation. This idea that your actions in life matter, that you either are having good karma or bad karma, following your duty or not following your duty. And therefore, that might decide where your next life would be born. But we're going to get into more details about that next week. And that, my cherubs, is going to be our lesson for today. I'm going to stop the recording. Do we have any